So today's session is about PowerPoint, and it's creating presentations that I say won't frighten your audience. We're a day late for Halloween, but the sentiment is still the same. People use PowerPoint all the time, especially in doing large presentations to large audiences, and we certainly know our faculty use them in the classroom. But there are some things that they do that may not be beneficial. So we're going to run through those today. One of the first things, of course, are copyright laws. The internet has made it extremely easy for us to go out and find images that we can use in our PowerPoint presentations. Most of the images that we pull off the internet, although we can access them and save them, doesn't mean we have the right to use them. So before using any images in a presentation that you'll be giving to an audience, you want to make sure that you have the right. So use public domain clip art. If you go out to Google and put free clip art and then type in the image you're looking for, you're going to be able to find those images that you don't have to pay royalties to use. The same thing about quoting sources. You want to make sure that you cite the source, whether it's in the presentation or at the end of the presentation, making sure that you note where you received that quote from. If you're not familiar with Slide Masters, this is a template that are preloaded in Office or Microsoft Office PowerPoint. So these slide masters are design templates, and what you're seeing in front of you comes from a design template. To get to the template, you go up to the tab at the top, and I hope that you can see my cursor here. When you click design, you have all these designs to choose from. After you select a design, you see as I hover over this particular design, it's changing what you see. You can also change the variant, and the variant are colors. So you can change the colors too. So you can change, see it went from purple to blue, can go to gray, and all I'm doing is changing it. It's preloaded graphics. So this is really helpful because these color schemes are designed so that they work well together. And it automatically gives you the color of your font as well as the graphics, and everything coordinates well. So using that is extremely helpful. You can also change the master slide, and that is, let's say I don't like the font that is used on this particular design. I can go up to the master slide, which you find under View, and see this icon right here is called Master Slide, or Slide Master. If I come into this shows me the templates. So I can click on this one and change this font. If I do that, all my slides change. And it's very, very helpful if there's a particular font that you need, or if there's a logo you would like to put on every single slide. You can do it on the slide master and automatically copies it over. If you want to put the TCU logo on every slide, you can imagine how big the presentation would get if you copy and pasted it on every single slide. By doing it in the master, it's only there once, so that way it doesn't make the presentation bigger and bigger. It's just one logo. So that's extremely helpful to use as a shortcut. And then once you're finishing making changes to the master, then you can just close it out and go back to your presentation. When selecting those colors on the design, you want to make sure those colors look good. You'll see, you can look ahead and see some of the colors. These are real examples that people have used in presentations. This may look good on your screen, but when it's blown up in front of an audience, it doesn't look good. These colors don't coordinate well, and it's really kind of busy for a professional presentation. I had a student use this one before. It certainly got everybody's attention, but it was the wrong kind of attention. It's very in your face and kind of obnoxious. So if I was doing a professional presentation, I certainly wouldn't want to use this as my background and all these primary colors at once. Something we want to be mindful of, when using red in a presentation, 15% of men are colorblind. And depending on your audience, maybe a great number of the people in the audience would be classified as colorblind, or we would make that assumption. Using red in the presentation as part of your text or part of the background, they may not be able to see it. For instance, you can see the images here. We have a circle, we have a square, and we have a star. If you're colorblind, you only see one image here, the square. If you can see all colors, then you see that there's a square and a circle. But if your audience is colorblind, they may be missing part of your presentation because they can't see that circle. So it's just something to keep in mind. Avoid using the color red in your presentation. If you want to emphasize your text, you can use a different color or maybe bold or underline to emphasize something instead of using the color red. Looking at different colored text, I see this on my screen as green, gray, red, blue, and brown, but I'm not sure what colors you see. The colors that you see on your computer screen are going to be very different than what comes through the projector. So if you're looking at several variants of a color or different shades, be mindful it's going to look different. One of the presentations I used previously was definitely purple. There were lots of things on it that were purple, but when I put it on the projector, it was blue. And I use a lot of purple being at TCU, but it doesn't look like it's purple. And so that's something to keep in mind. You may want to do a trial run with your presentation using the projector that you'll be using when you do the presentation to ensure that the colors come out the way you want them to. Using sans serif for the text of your slide makes it easier to read. Here I've given you 3 very common sans serif text. Sans serifs mean without the tail. And then as you look at the Arial, there's no little feet on the A, like there's no little wings on the T. The serif font are those with the little wings and tails, like Times New Roman. That's pretty common in titles. It's easy to read for a title, but if you're looking at a lot of text, the sans serif is better. So you can change the fonts that you use. Remember to use that master slide. And when you use the master, it changes all of the slides at once and will then be the default going forward as you add new slides. Here's an example of sans serif font, and then an example of serif font. And you can see one may be just a little bit easier to read. When putting your presentation together, it's a good idea to limit the number of different font styles that you use. Rule of thumb says use no more than 4 different types of font. You use one for titles so that every slide has the same font in the title, one for the text, and then maybe 2 variants for emphasis. Maybe one is bold or one is underlined, and you can use those instead of using different colors to emphasize certain pieces of the text. But certainly limit it to 4 different font styles. Another thing to watch is your font size. When we're projecting to an audience, it is helpful to keep it at least 24-point font, and it looks rather large on your screen. Here's an example of 48-point font. That's very, very busy, and you'll see that the text wrap onto different lines, makes it very hard to read. If I go down to 36-point font, it is a little bit easier. Each of those statements now covers 2 full lines. Very simple, large enough for me to see. And if I go to 24-point font, again a little smaller, but projecting this on a screen, I'm going to be able to read this. If I go smaller, it's probably going to be too small for a large audience to be able to read from about 50 feet away. So ensuring 24-point font will be helpful to your audience. And of course, we want to avoid the all caps, the dreaded all caps. It's difficult to read, and it assumes that you're yelling at the audience, probably not the attention that you want. All lowercase is, of course, seen as unprofessional, or looks like you don't know how to write. Probably you're one of the students and just texting a friend. So you want to make sure that you either use what we call sentence case or that you capitalize each word. To do this very quickly, you can highlight the words, and then up at the top there is a button that allows you to change the case. So I can click on it and say sentence case, and here it automatically changes all the words, so the first one is capitalized only. I could change it to all lowercase. I could change it to all uppercase. I could capitalize each word, or I could toggle case, which I'm not sure when you would ever need that, but it is available if you want to toggle your capitalized words. So in this case, maybe I want all lowercase or sentence case, and I can simply change that. So highlighting a whole slide and doing it all at once. In this case, I'm going to leave it uppercase because it is an example for you. Another thing to remember is that when putting your slides together, they should be no more than 7 lines long, and lines should have no more than 7 words. Now, I've seen different versions of this. I've seen 6 by 6, I've seen 8 by 8, but it's best to remember that fewer words is better. Your audience is not busy reading this long paragraph, because if you put a long paragraph up there, they're going to be reading it and not listening to the words of the presenter. You want to make sure that the slides don't distract from your presenter, and it should only be used for talking points or to emphasize a single statement that the presenter is making. It's not to do the presentation for them. Oftentimes, I've seen people use only graphics as part of their presentation instead of words to avoid the audience from reading ahead or focused on reading the slide instead of listening. Even if you're using the 7 by 7 format, you want to avoid wrapping the text. Here is a great example of how confusing a slide can be when it wraps onto different lines. It's too much information, and someone spends their time reading ahead instead of listening. So making the words longer, smaller font, however you may want to choose to do it, you want to make sure that there aren't too many words on a single line, even if there are only 7. When using graphics within your presentation, you want to make sure that they enhance the message rather than distracting from the message. Don't try to squeeze them in just because someone says, I really need graphics in my presentation. They should add to it, not distract. So looking at this type of slide, we say takeaways or a summary of our presentation. And we've chosen to use a graphic of takeaway Chinese food. That's what that's supposed to be anyway. So in this case, it's a little bit of an enhancement. Of course, we can also have an example of some really bad ones. Too many graphics that distract from our message. In this case, it becomes too cluttered. We're not sure what we're supposed to focus on. So when it comes to graphics, less is more. Then we have the fun thing of animation. I always know when students have learned to use animation because everything gets animated. Lots of stuff that shouldn't be animated. Again, animation should add to your presentation, not distract. And we also use it to prevent them from reading ahead so that each line appears when needed. Or if we need things to disappear to emphasize it, we can do that as well. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to flip into slideshow mode here so that I can show you some examples of good animation and probably some poor animation. So in this case, we're showing you that each line pops up as I click on the mouse. So how should we enter our text? In this case, appears, probably the most common and the most professional. But we can do some other things like having it wipe in from the side. That can be very distracting and also pretty slow, which annoys some people. Or it can come in from the bottom or the side or the top. Again, slow can be distracting. And then wiping it on from the inside out, again, can be really annoying. So you want to make sure that whatever you choose for the words to appear does not distract your audience. Yet another one. So what happens when you have text that you want to emphasize to bring a point home? You can do a variety of things. That one's probably not professional. Having it pop up, change color, that may be helpful. You want to make sure that when you emphasize it to a different color, it doesn't use the color red. When we have it slanted as such, it can be difficult to see that. I'm going to back that one up and do it again. Sometimes the emphasis we use may not be the best for the audience to read. That one with a wobble, or this one that gets bigger, can be very difficult to read and may not be the type of emphasis that you want for your words. Now, how about words that we need to exit off the page? They can just simply disappear, can slide off, can be wiped out that way. So there's a variety of ways to do it, but again, which one shows the most professional given your context and your audience? And then what's effective? To appear, to darken, That is also helpful. This way you can follow along, the audience can follow along with your presenter as they make each point. Although everything is there that they can review if needed, we highlight the exact point that we're making at the time. So that can be extremely effective. When it comes to slide transitions, again, boring may be better here. In this case, we want to make sure that the changing slide does not divert the attention. Simple is best, it's professional. This one just kind of transitioned and went to black and came back. But here are a few that I have seen over the years that may not be considered professional. Let's look at that one. The checkerboard design. Although one may not be bad, can you imagine sitting through an entire hour where every minute the slides are changing with a checkerboard? Or how about the wheel? Again, one time may not be bad, but if you're sitting through a lengthy presentation, it can get distracting. Slide bars, the spinning wheel. That one's a wipe over. The spinning slide, certainly make your audience dizzy. So a couple of slide transitions you probably want to avoid. When it comes to the end of the presentation, a lot of people would just close with a black screen. That is the last slide that they were speaking out. When they're finished, it goes to black. The problem with that is what we're looking at here is a presentation that's all white. If it goes to all black, it changes the light in the room, and that can be very distracting. If they are taking questions, then the person is up against a black screen and the lights have been dimmed. So a better way to end the presentation is to use the title slide layout for something like this. Saying thank you with the person's contact information. Or one that I like, leaving with an inspirational quote. And again, we have contact information. But this does not change the lighting in the room, so if they are going to take questions from the audience, then everyone can still see the speaker. The notes section of PowerPoint is extremely helpful. So if you look down at your screen, there are a variety of ways to see your presentation. But in this case, we can use the notes sections down below to make our speaker notes. So maybe they want a couple of examples that they want to use. They would make those notes here. When we are finished with our presentation and ready to go, if you come up to our file and print, it allows you to select how to print these pages. And you can say notes pages. So in this case, it prints the slide and then the speaker notes that you have typed into the presentation. That also gives them room to actually write in additional notes if they so choose. One thing you may want to do is rearrange your slides. There is a view here in PowerPoint that allows you to do that. If you click on View and go to Slide Sorter, it allows you to take a slide and move it around very, very quickly and easily. You can also print the slides out, arrange them manually by paper, and then come back and do this if you're more of a visual person that needs to see it all laid out. But it does save you some time if you need to rearrange based on your speaking points. One thing that I find extremely helpful is looking at the properties to my slide presentation. If I come up to File, you'll see that this version of PowerPoint allows me to access properties here. When I show advanced properties, I get this dialog box. Here, I am allowed to put in additional information. Besides just the title of the file and my name of who created it, I can also add different subjects or categories or keywords. This may be extremely helpful. If you are someone who is constantly putting together PowerPoint presentations and you know there's a slide that you like to use and it's copied over from different versions, you may decide to come in here and put in keywords. We do this so that when we go to find a presentation, we can use the search feature in our File Explorer and it'll pull it up, regardless of what the title is of the file. It's extremely helpful. So in this, I might do something like, although it's called PowerPoint, I might say Tech Tuesday, font changes, printing notes. So any of the topics that I cover in this presentation, that way when I search, these can be searchable keywords. It's extremely helpful if you have a lot of presentations to go through. So before we end, just a word of caution, make sure you test and retest, practice, 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 especially when it comes to animations, so that it looks exactly the way you think it should look. And then I find it extremely helpful. If I'm putting a presentation together and I'm going to be presenting in front of a group, but I'm not going to get there to set up before the group enters the room, I like to save my presentation in PowerPoint show format. And what then happens here, it looks just like a PowerPoint file, but when I open it, it doesn't look like this. It opens directly to the PowerPoint slideshow. If you're assisting someone who's technically challenged and can never figure out how to start the presentation, it may be helpful to save it in that format so when they double click, it automatically comes up as a slideshow. You would do this by going to File, Save As, and then instead of PowerPoint Presentation, which is what most of our PowerPoints are saved as, we would come down and select PowerPoint Show. So in this case, it's now saved. If I go out to my files, right here it says PowerPoint Slideshow. So if you save this to your desktop, it makes it really easy. You click on it and it automatically opens in the slideshow format. So it's a great shortcut to use. So that's it for our presentation today. If you have any questions, I am happy to entertain those at this time. If not, I thank you for joining us and we'll see you again soon.